grandmother's funeral was the day we were supposed to meet again.
Yeah, right. It was a tough day for me, but it must have been worse for you.
It was unreal. I remember looking at her dead body in the coffin and her beautiful hands, so warm, so sweet, that used to hold me, but nothing in that coffin resembled what I remembered of her.
Before Sunset. The Dark Knight may be one of the 3 best movies of the century, but this is easily the best direct sequel of the century. I am famously critical of romance of any kind in movies, primarily because of my own negative experiences, but also because so much of the time romance in film is so exaggerated to the point that it leads to problematic behavior being thought of as acceptable. But Before Sunset not only provides the most realistic depiction of romance I think I've seen in anything, but it's also got the added layer that it's a sequel set 9 years after the original, allowing the interactions between the characters to feel both brand new and familiar, picking up where we left off, literally aging in real time with them. With this series, I've examined romance is portrayed throughout the 21st century in all forms. Short form life-changing with Lost in Translation, forbidden yet wholesome within the mood for love, damaged yet room for improvement with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and passionate and motivated by mutual need for escape with The Handmaiden. It's hilarious that Before Sunset might be the healthiest version here because Jesse and Celine's relationship is anything but healthy. They're literally talking through any and all different forms of what their relationship could have been, how tiny little events and interferences from the universe prevented them from being together, and now have seemingly brought them back together. It's all the things that go through your head when you're at any stage of a relationship. While I do personally prefer Before Sunrise, I realize that's because my own selfish view of romance that the best part is the initial meet-cute honeymoon phase and that it's all downhill after that. Before Sunset is by nature confronting that idea, questioning whether it even really exists, and then going one step further by asking, does it really matter if the right 2 people are meant for each other?
Around with no shoes on, the moon was out. This one time, I run by this old lady. I was running, hollering, cutting a fool, boy. This old lady, she stopped me. She said, running around, catching up all that light.
Moonlight. Okay, seriously, what the fuck, people? What are we doing? Why was this on almost no one's 25? This is one of the best coming of age, LGBTQ, person of color, pouring one's soul out all over the canvas movies that I have ever seen. I could argue that this is the movie that made me stop seeing movies as just movies, but rather as cinema. And look, I get it. La La Land is a very artfully made movie, but it has no substance, unlike Chazelle's other movies. This movie, on the other hand, God, it infuriates me that this has become lost to history because of that beyond stupid envelope kerfluffle. This movie blew my 19-year-old brain away when I first saw it. I'm not gonna go so far as to say I didn't watch a lot of black movies growing up, but let's be real. I'm a white kid who grew up privileged in the suburbs. I have no idea what real struggle is like and probably never will. Not like this. Because this isn't just struggle to survive, it's struggle to maintain identity. And this is before your identity is even fully formed. The beauty and tragedy of Chiron's coming of age, told in one of the best uses of the 3-act structure I've ever seen, is that you're literally witnessing him grow up and come into his own in a condensed period of time. 20 years is shown in just under 2 hours, and you come away from it with a full portrait. And while I didn't see Benjamin Button in theaters, I can safely say that I was on the Mahershala Ali train before most people knew who he even was, given that I'm a day one House of Cards fan. So it was beyond rewarding to see him recognized and properly awarded for this. With less than 15 minutes of screen time, he delivers an entire arc, with his character Juan realizing that as much as he tries to make Chiron's life better, he's also the devil keeping him down by unwittingly selling drugs to his mom. It could have so easily devolved into sadcore porn, especially in that brutal middle section, but it doesn't. It remains honest and raw, like a gaping open wound. The poem by Terrell Alvin McCraney, the credited co-writer that served as the inspiration, is called In Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue, a title that is more prophetic than it realized. And the fact that his name is Chiron, after the centaur mentor figure for so many ancient Greek heroes, an irony in that he feels so lost for most of it. This movie holds a special place in my heart for so many different reasons, but namely that it was the one time, maybe the only time, where the little guy actually won the big prize. Children of Men. Wow. Just wow. This is the most recent movie that I watched on this list. I saw that it was set in 2027, only 1 year from where we are now, and yeah, they pretty much nailed it. Like, to a T. Also, I've got a giant bone to pick with Logan now because it copied this movie beat for fucking beat. In a world that has all but plummeted into chaos due to rising infertility rates, there hasn't been a baby born since 2009. Clive Owen's Theo Farron, a former activist turned cynical bureaucrat, is recruited by his ex-wife, played by Julianne Moore, who's now the leader of an activist resistance group to provide transit papers for what is revealed to be the first pregnant woman in 18 years. Directed by Alfonso Cuarón, adapted from the novel by P.D. James, the movie trades up intense character backstory and motivation for a more baseline archetype structure, truly allowing us to experience character progression through the journey of this world. Emmanuel Lubezki's cinematography is some of of the best I've ever seen with the super long oneers. There's a car action sequence that happens near the half-hour mark that is one of those how the fuck did they do this moments in film. There was something surreal about watching this only 1 year before the events of the film actually take place. Obviously, at the time the movie came out, we were a year into Bush's second term and well into the war in Iraq, but none of that was on my mind as I was watching it. I felt like I was watching a documentary at points, seeing immigrants mostly of color in cages that felt a little too similar to the ice cages we've seen on the news. There's also a cruel irony to the whole infertility pandemic here, because there's quite a lot of people in my age group who are wondering whether having kids is even worth it, given how radically the onset of AI seeks to change the culture, leaving most people wondering if there will even be a future for their children and what it'll look like. There's a sequence at the beginning where Theo goes to visit his cousin, played by Danny Houston, to get the transit papers, and we're brought into this uber-wealthy palace that's completely isolated from the outside world, in a startlingly accurate representation of the class divide that's on display right now. How the wealthy hoard all the world's great art without understanding the point of it and willfully choosing to ignore the plights of the outside world. There's also a pretty heavy religious angle as well, with many resistance groups at the beginning bearing messages like, "Is God punishing us?" with a particularly specific sequence at the end when Theo and Key, holding her newborn baby, walk through a crowd of soldiers and dissidents who all stop fighting in a brief moment of peace that feels Christ-like in its presentation. It's between this and Idiocracy that were the most prescient when it came to where we would be as a society. And despite its somber tone, it does have somewhat of a hopeful note at the end, with Theo dying once he knows Key and her baby are safe with the humane society.
Snitch.
Rat you out.
Tattletale.
Yeah.
Oh, don't you worry about that. I can assure you, I don't answer to anyone.
Get out! The movie that gave every white liberal a soapbox to stand on and make life miserable for us for the next decade, and all because Jordan Peele was trying to warn Keegan-Michael Key about how his life would be ruined if he married a white woman. No, but in all seriousness, no one saw this coming. This was such a revolutionary effort for horror, for low-budget filmmaking, for black filmmaking. This was Childish Gambino-level specific storytelling, in that no one else could have told this story this specific way other than Jordan Peele. Obviously, as a white person, I'm in no way qualified to talk about the black experience around suburban whites, but having grown up around a decent amount of people like this in my life, I can say that Jordan Peele was right on the money with his presentation. Not to mention the greatest rewatch value of any movie ever. Like all great horror movies, it's towing the line between shock value and social commentary, and the lack of backstory around Chris actually helps to sow the horror even more. Because his mom was a cop who died in the line of duty when he was very young, he craves the structure that he never had growing up, which is part of the reason why the Armitages seem so alluring, at least until he actually meets them. Peele's abilities as a master puzzle maker are put on display here, adding to the rewatchability, because even when the pieces are laid out and put together, they're done so in such a way that still shocks and horrifies you, even when you know what's coming. It's also an incredible form of black commentary on horror itself, because one of the greatest gifts you can do for yourself as a movie watcher is watching any generic slasher with a black audience. It's one of the most fun I personally have ever had watching any movie, and this makes that a part of the movie itself in the form of Lil Rel Howery's Rod, who quite literally spells out the entire plot only to be mocked and belittled for it by snooty police. This movie is brilliant. Also, talk about a showcase for female performances. Between Allison Williams, Catherine Keener, and breakout Betty Gabriel, I cannot decide who kills it more. Pun very much intended. Betty Gabriel saying no repeatedly to Chris, Allison Williams looking through photos of black men to entrap while eating her cereal and drinking her milk separately. Ugh, this movie rules.
You ever lost on a coin toss? Sir? The most you ever lost on a coin toss? I don't know. I couldn't say. Call it.
No Country for Old Men. Had to get the Coens in there. 2007 might be the greatest year for film ever. Between this, There Will Be Blood, Zodiac, Michael Clayton, Ratatouille, we were just cooking with something different that year. The Coen brothers were known throughout the 80s and 90s for channeling their bleak cynicism towards humanity into some absurd slapdash comedies, and sometimes something a little more metatextual. But then they got their hands on Cormac McCarthy's signature novel about a down-on-his-luck Vietnam vet who stumbles upon a case full of money at a drug deal gone bad and ends up being pursued by Anton Chigurh, a ruthless hitman who may very well be the devil himself. In typical Coen brothers fashion, it's about the inherent cynicism concerning existence, how for whatever small amount of good we may possess, it will always be outweighed by our propensity for evil, leading to not so desirable outcomes. It made them the perfect directors to tackle this novel, in addition to the fact that 2007 was also the year of the revisionist Western. What's interesting is that they created a little bit of backlash when this came out, because the build-up cat and mouse game between Moss and Chigurh was so engaging that when Moss gets killed by the cartel due to a slip-up by his wife's mother, it feels so anticlimactic, but it's that way by design. The trick here is that the chase, the thriller elements, are the distraction from the existentialism introduced at the beginning by by Tommy Lee Jones, Ed Tom Bell. The Coens have always been fascinated by the evil president man, and this is their acknowledgement that there's no stopping that, no matter what we do. Ed Tom Bell has spent close to 50 years on the job, has helped countless amounts of people, and it doesn't matter one bit. Not when you've got Anton Chigurh, the devil in human flesh around. Greed, avarice, sin in general will always be present, and mankind will forever be susceptible to it. It's why this is acknowledged as the Coens' masterpiece, why it finally got them their long overdue Best Picture and Director wins, and is the best revisionist Western of the 21st century.
Your Jew dogs.
Actually, we're all tickled to hear you say that. Quite frankly, watching Donnie beat Nazis to death is the closest we ever get to going to the movies. Donnie!
Yeah.
Guy's German here wants to die for country. Oblige him.
Inglourious Basterds. My Tarantino pick for the list, my one that I share in common with pretty much every single other one of these, and yeah, this is a no doy. If we're talking Tarantino, universally it's known that Pulp is number 1 and Bastards is number 2. He's contributed a lot to the 21st century, including, weirdly enough, an episode of CSI, but yeah, he even says it at the end of the movie.
I think this just might be my masterpiece.
Egotistical and full of himself as usual, yes, but he earns it. Also, maybe the greatest revisionist history movie ever made. I think what sets this apart from the rest of his 21st century fare is that he manages to draw a pretty consistent line between somber and the fantastical, something he's usually got no interest in. As fun as the Bastard storyline is, the Shoshana one is what gets better every time I watch it because the scenes with her are straight out of a horror movie. The opening scene with Lana is already an exercise in tension through dialogue, but the scene where she's dragged in front of Goebbels to determine if her theater is worthy of showing Zoller's film, where Lana almost recognizes her, but in a brief moment of weakness, or maybe not, doesn't, is literally nails on a chalkboard level of cringe. You can't wait for it to be over, but you can't stop watching. To me, it's where Tarantino cemented his legacy as one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, and it kicked off a run of films that are rivaled by few others. I mean, I didn't think you could make a cooler character than Jules Winfield, and for me, I think I like Aldo a little bit more, only because he has slightly more screen time. He's such an absurd character, but Pitt brings a level of realness to him that would be impossible for any other actor to do. And then there's Hans Landa, rounding out the Academy Award-winning villains Hall of Fame that ended the 2000s, following up Bardem as Chigurh and Ledger's Joker. Landa is a villain for the ages, cunning and manipulative, playful yet always deadly, having fun and cracking a shit-eating grin throughout the entire movie, a role famously so difficult to cast that Tarantino almost considered not making the movie until he discovered Christoph Waltz. This movie is so good that even the alternate castings are awesome, because what do you mean that Adam Sandler almost played Donnie Donowitz, the Bear Jew? Or that Tarantino liked Michael Fassbender's audition for Landa so much that he cast him as Hecox instead, effectively jumpstarting his mainstream career? And this being a movie in which cinema plays a vital role, Tarantino throws in his many thoughts and feelings about the history of cinema, including a very insightful take about King Kong being a metaphor for the slave trade that I think still holds up. It's his biggest and his most bombastic movie, and it's the one that really announced, I'm going to rule the 21st century.
I wish none of this had happened.
So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us.
The Lord of the Rings. Yes, the whole trilogy. Oh, but it's a trilogy. You can only pick one movie. Well, look, it's my list. I can do what I want. And also because I don't think any other trilogy of movies has defined blockbuster filmmaking the way this one has. These movies basically ensured that we would get Harry Potter, Pirates of the Caribbean, Avatar, the Chris Nolan Batman movies, the Mission Impossible movies, the Transformers movies, the Fast and the Furious movies, and the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that's not even getting into the pop cultural lexicon that these movies would become. Let me put it this way. Before this trilogy, the only thing that Lord of the Rings fans had besides the books was the Ralph Bakshi animated movie, which adapted only 1.5 of the 3. And calling it a fandom wasn't even fair. It's not like the books were on the level of, say, like Star Wars or even Star Trek. People talk all the time about what passion and fandom really is, but Peter Jackson was a true fan because how he was able to conceive of this masterwork of a set of movies out of Tolkien's very long, very arduous, and at times, yeah, I'm gonna say it, very boring work is astounding. And now, 25 years later, everyone and their mother knows.
You shall not pass!
One ring to rule them all.
These aren't just pop culture staples, these are cultural staples. And to make my point about why the whole trilogy needs to be on here, this entire thing was conceived as one story. Peter Jackson honored Tolkien by shooting all 3 back-to-back, a monumental achievement that has been copied many times over the years into mixed results. And it helps give this a real sense of continuity that most series miss, due to the fact that even with adaptations, they're always greenlit off the success of the initial installment. Thankfully, all 3 were triumphs, breaking every box office record at the time, being the only trilogy other than The Godfather where all 3 were nominated for picture, with Return of the King still holding the record with 11 Academy Award wins, the most of any film ever, ensuring this trilogy as one for the ages that we will keep coming back to over and over and over again.
Worse than people, Henry. I don't need to look past seeing them to get all I need. built up my hatreds over the years, little by little.
There will be blood, oil, greed, money, family, costs, percentages, competition.
I drink your milkshake.
It's literally the movie about America. It was Paul Thomas Anderson saying, okay, I need to mature as a filmmaker. And then he went and made the great American classic. To the point where almost 20 years later, I still don't think we've had one quite like this. One battle after another captured the current fractured mindset of the country in an Odyssey-esque fable, but this still remains the most honest depiction. At the Cannes Film Festival in 1999, Paul Thomas Anderson was asked who the two actors he most wanted to work with next were. His answer? Adam Sandler and Daniel Day-Lewis. History has always been on PTA's side, even if the Oscars aren't. But There Will Be Blood stands out as the magnum opus because he's applying his signature quirks and filmmaking techniques in a way that feels so much more mature and epic than any of his previous efforts. Boogie Nights and Magnolia are both sprawling, ensemble-filled Robert Altman-esque pictures, but There Will Be Blood pulls back to focus on a singular character study. What's interesting about Daniel Plainview is that he's not necessarily a cruel person, he's advantageous. He'll do and use whatever and whoever he needs in order to get ahead, and yet he still displays moments of tenderness throughout the film. He appears to care deeply for HW, his adopted son, and is deeply hurt when the man imitating his brother's duplicity is revealed. There's always that element of cruelty lurking underneath. He leaves HW to check on the quality of the well. He lies to the Sundays about how much he plans on exploiting their land, and even admits that niceties don't interest him, and that his inner competition will forever outstrip any other emotion. It's Darwinism at its most sadistic, how that drive to survive can outpace even the simplest of human compassion. And that doesn't stop at Daniel, because one can make the argument that Paul Dano's Eli Sunday is the flip side of the coin. Eli's exploitation of people comes in the form of the church, preying on people's inner weakness to make himself appear mighty. And even though I don't subscribe to Tarantino's very poor take on Dano's performance, the casting is a little too perfect, since Dano is an actor who comes off as whiny, effeminate, and not the most glaring example of traditional masculinity, especially opposite Plainview. It's extremely deliberate, which is insane when you consider that Dano was only supposed to play Paul, Eli's twin brother who appears briefly at the beginning. And yes, the irony that both Day-Lewis and Dano are playing characters that share their first names is not lost on me. With this movie and Inglourious Basterds 2 years later, PTA and Tarantino both had these awakenings, it seems like, after having this insane moment in the 90s where they were both being hailed as the next kings of Hollywood in their late 20s and early 30s, where they realized they needed to mature as filmmakers, and their films released around this time prove it. Hollywood may have gone in a different direction than the films that we were promised, choosing instead to focus on franchises after the success of The Dark Knight and Iron Man, but history has a funny way of working itself back around, with PTA's recent Oscar win for One Battle showing that the pendulum has indeed swung back in the other direction.
I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you stranger.
The Dark Knight. These should come as any surprise. I fully expect everyone to be groaning and saying, oh man, so obvious, because no doy, these are the best movies of the 21st century. But I don't want to talk about all the amazing technical things with this movie and how it basically ensured Christopher Nolan is the director of our generation. I first want to come at it exclusively as a Batman fan. For a lot of us late millennials, early Gen Zers, our idea of Batman was pretty defined, like so many other things, by the 90s animated series. I was a decade late to the Tim Burton Batman movies, and my problem with all of those is Batman was never the main character of them. Nolan's first installment, Batman Begins, fixed that, finally giving us a Batman movie centered entirely around Bruce's origin and journey to becoming the iconic character, grounding it in gritty realism while maintaining the comic flair. The Dark Knight is where not only Batman, but superhero movies as a whole are legitimized, ushering in a new era for Hollywood, a new kind of moviegoer, a new kind of movie culture, if you will. It's impossible to have any sort of definitive ranking of movies based purely on subjectivity, because every movie is going to mean something different to everyone. But when it comes to cultural impact, few movies this century have had one like this. Not to mention giving us not only the performance of the century, but possibly the best performance of all time, at least since Brando and The Godfather.
Why so serious?
In 100 years, people are still going to be quoting Ledger. It also got Christopher Nolan to shift filmmaking primarily to IMAX, and some of the action set pieces, I mean, that truck flipping sequence. Holy shit. Yeah, what else do I need to say? Cue those Joker one-liners.
I'm gonna make this pencil disappear. It's gone.
You have part of my attention. You have the minimum amount. The rest of my attention is back at the offices of Facebook, where my colleagues and I are doing things that no one in this room, including and especially your clients, are intellectually or creatively capable of doing.
The Social Network. If The Dark Knight summed up our obsession with superheroes and a crime epic, and There Will Be Blood is the story of America, then this is the story of how we lost our way. And all because the wrong dude got rejected by a girl. That didn't actually happen, by the way, at least according to Zuckerberg himself. It certainly helps to have been a certain age when this movie came out, because it is crucial to have been going through the maturation process to understand this movie's importance. Yes, it may be a generic choice, but to that I say, sometimes the generic generic choice is the obvious one, because to go with any other one feels a little bit too edgelord to me. And if it makes the doubters feel better, these top three are pretty much interchangeable depending on the day. But the reason I went with The Social Network is because of how specifically it predicted societal collapse. Well, it's usually not the workings of just one man, rather a series of events that need to happen in a specific order. The way in which this film portrays Zuckerberg, no matter how inaccurately, displays a type of fragile male ego that oftentimes can trigger events like these. I often criticize baby boomers' misunderstanding of this technology and the power it holds, but in this case, Aaron Sorkin's criticism of it was spot on. We don't need to go into how Fincher and Sorkin together may have made for the greatest director-writer combo in the last 25 years, let alone maybe ever, at least since Orson Welles and Herman Mankiewicz. But Sorkin even admitted that despite years in the industry, multiple television shows, and movies under his name, he was the most challenged he had ever been under Fincher's direction. Only Fincher could take the things that so severely damaged the new millennium and pull a Scorsese approach in his own way by making it seem hip and cool and fun, while maintaining that dark undercurrent that things were only going to get worse, flipping the script on the classic bullied nerd rising up to become a tyrant formula on its head, showing Mark as a cunning Machiavel who blatantly steals the idea presented to him by the Winklevi twins, turning it into the thing that changed the entire world, and then legally worming his way out, destroying every relationship he formed along the way, including that of his best friend and co-founder Eduardo Saverin, played in a breakout role by Andrew Garfield. The irony is too tantalizing. The whole movie is concerned with the idea of cool and what that actually means, and the truth is just defying convention, sometimes to achieve something greater, but most of the time just to be a natural rebel. We see both in Mark's case, and even though he's got some devils motivating him to be worse for sure, look no further than Justin Timberlake's portrayal of Sean Parker, Mark is always the villain of his own story, even if the real Zuck will never see himself as such. Also, Peter Thiel is randomly in this movie as a background character who basically becomes the catalyst to Mark shutting Eduardo out at the end. Just gonna leave that there. The legacy of this movie is so strong that given everything that's happened as a result of Facebook in the last quarter century, the election rigging, the Russiagate hoax, WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, the Iran Green Movement, January 6th, it's inspired not only a sequel being released this year, this time directed by Sorkin, starring Mikey Madison, Jeremy Allen White, and Jeremy Strong replacing Eisenberg and Zuckerberg, but also a similar biopic surrounding OpenAI founder Sam Altman, who ironically will be portrayed by Andrew Garfield, a movie apparently so controversial that it was dropped by Amazon before being picked up by Neon. All of this and more continues to show that The Social Network was both showing the curve and ahead of it, making it the #1 best movie of the 21st century. And that was it! We did it! We made it through! Oh man, if you guys watched every video in this series, I give serious props to you. Oh my god, that took a while. That was maybe the hardest series that I have ever done. Seriously, props to you guys for sticking through. What did you guys think? What are your 25 favorite movies of the century so far? Remember, they have to be 2000 or later. 1999 and above do not count. So don't let me catch you guys putting any perfect blue in there. Whatever your guys' thoughts are, leave them in the comment section below. Make sure you like this video and all the videos in this series. Subscribe. Make sure you leave a comment. Follow all the social medias. They're all in the link in the bio. And make sure you guys continue to stay tuned for all the stuff that we have planned coming out on the Talkin TV series. I've got TIFF 51 coming up. We still have so much more stuff planned for the rest of the year. Also, go and donate to my first feature film. The link for that is also in the bio. Once again, thank you to everybody who has continued to support me on my journey all throughout this point. And as always, people, 12 seasons in a short film, and watch more fucking movies. We'll see you guys next time.